So we have many different topics today. Now we have a slightly different one. We are going to talk about security, about the overview of authentication and authorization features in Envoy. I'm Yangmin Zhu. I'm a software engineer at Google, and I'm working on Istio.
My name is Wen Zhang. I'm working for Google.
Okay, let's get started. So before we look into the features, let's see what's the problem we're going to address. So we are going to enforce access control based on authenticated identities or various other information in Envoy. How do we do this? So we know Envoy is powerful and flexible, and we use many different filters together to do these things. We will talk about the JART filter for authentication of JSON Web Token, and we will talk about two other filters for the authorization. The RBAC filter, it does the authorization right in Envoy, and the external authorization filter does the authorization out of Envoy. We will also talk about some example use case and the caveats about using these filters.
JAR filter is going to verify the JWT token. We verify its signature, issuer, and the audience. So the filter config will also allow you to specify where to extract the public key for verification, and then where to extract the JWT token. Also allow you to specify which request has to, to enforce the verification. So here is an example of the filter config here. So here the providers mean the authentication provider. So you can allow you to specify audience and where to get the JWKS, that means the public key for signature verification. And that could be remote. You can fetch from remote, or you can fetch from you can embed a W key inside the config here. And also allow you to specify where to get a token. And then what's the output? How do you forward the output? After verification, the JWT payload will where to output the payload. So here also have a rule specify which request does not require authentication. Like a typical request is for health pass, you probably don't want to do the verification. And for API request, you want to verify by the provider 1. And then for other requests, you provide by provider 2. That's a typical filter config.
Thanks, Ring. So let's, after we have authenticated the user identity through the JAR token, let's move on to the authorization part. So first, the RBAC filter, it enforces access control inside Envoy. The RBAC filter is essentially two parts. It includes an action and a list of policies. The action supports either allow or deny, which means you can configure the RBAC filter to be working as a whitelist or blacklist. The policy includes three parts: permission, principal, and condition. The permission and principal is a built-in AST using AND, OR, LOT, and other semantics. It's fast, but it has limited semantics. The condition is using the Google Common Expression language, so you write something like A plus B equals C. It's more flexible, but also it's more slower. You can combine the permission, principal, and conditions to meet your security requirements. The RBAC filter also supports a shadow policy, which means you can evaluate and log a policy, but without enforcing it. This is very useful when you are trying to test a policy before rolling it out to your production environment. The RBAC filter supports both HTTP and TCP traffic, and it emits some useful states, like the allowed and denied request, so you can see that your RBAC policy is really allowing and denying requests. So this is a sample RBAC config. It is configured to use action allow, which means configured for whitelist. It includes only one policy, which is called product-viewer. It has one permission and one principal. We are not using condition here. The permission is specifying 3 added rules for a request with GET method, for the path with prefix /admin and enter the port 80. And the principle is allowing two separate principles. The principle could be a jar token of subject admin. It could also be a X59 certificate of principal production. If there is a request matches a permission and matches one of the principles, it will be annulled. In other cases, it will be denied. Next, the other filter for authorization is the external authorization filter. It does essentially the same thing as the RBAC filter, but it does it outside the Envoy. It delegates the authorization decision to your external authorization service. The external authorization filter includes mainly a service definition and some other configurations. The service defines various information about the authorization service, like where to find it, how to talk to it. You can implement it in either HTTP or gRPC. And what to be included in the request response. You can return the direct, annul, or deny from your external authorization service, or you can include some additional header to the upstream service so that it can be used for like a token exchange. The external authorization server filter will send a check request to your authorization service. It includes attributes of the source, destination, and the connection. It also supports both HTTP and TCP traffic, and it also emits some useful states, like the requests are now denied and the error. Next is a sample config of the external authorization config filter. So first, the authorization service is defined as a HTTP service. We set the failure mode now to false, which means we will reject requests if the communication between Envoy and the authorization service has failed. It includes a metadata context namespaces, which means it will pass the JOT payload authenticated by the JOT filter to your authorization server. So you can do custom authorization logic based on the JOT identities. It sends a request to the Auth cluster defined in the cluster section. It sets a TLS context to verify the external authorization service and encrypts the traffic. So one example, and maybe a little bit extreme use case, is to use all of these filters together. You put the JOT filter in front of the filter chain that does verification and extracts the JOT tokens. You put the RBAC filter in the second place that enforces access control right in Envoy. And if that's not enough, you put your external authorization filter in the end that talks to your external authorization system to do some additional access control work. Each filter, they can share the outputs from praise filters through the Envoy dynamic metadata. And you don't need to use all of them. If you only need JOT validation, you can just use JOT filter. If you only need in Envoy access control, you can only use JOT filter and RBAC filter. It all depends on your actual requirements. Next, here is some caveats we have seen based on our experience. It's not a complete list. So first, make sure your filter is configured correctly for protecting your service. You really need to add tests for both positive and negative cases. The positive is a null case, and the negative is a deny case, because we have seen a case that users, they think they configure the access control, but the access control is always allow like array request. If you do not have a test case for the deny, you don't even know it's like a denying request. Second, be careful when upgrading Envoy if you are using the -- ignore unknown field, especially if there is any renaming in the API and you are writing the Envoy config manually and it could be ignored silently. Second, generally you should configure the JOT, RBAC, and the external authorization filter in front of other filters because they do authentication and authorization. If you put them after the TCP proxy, it means nothing, right? Next, the JOT authentication filter, it supports both remote JOCs and local JOCs. They both have cons and pros. For example, the remote JOCs, Envoy will fetch the JOT public key for you from the external service, but it will introduce some additional latency here. If you use local jobs, you need to maintain the jobs rotation and fetch it manually. Last, for the use of RBAC and external authorization, RBAC is much faster because it does all the access control right in the Envoy. External authorization is much flexible, but it does all those things out of Envoy. And you should use TLS to encrypt your traffic. All of these chooses depending on your QPS goal and requirements. That's it. Thank you.